Here are the crime scene basics notes, and you need to use the Google form to fill in the spaces. It's not always exactly clear, so if you have questions, please let me know. But in the shaded Google sections on the Google form, the shaded areas where you can click on and actually put your answers, okay? So getting started here about what the crime scene basics are, we have a couple of things that we need to take a look at, okay? The first thing we need to take a look at is some of the vocabulary that is used. So for right now, we have the crime scene. That is where the original crime scene or the crime actually occurred. So that can be usually the primary is what it's usually called, the original one. And then the secondary one is the second place where even more evidence can be found. So for example, let's say somebody ends up taking somebody to kill somebody in a house. Then they pack them in a car and then they drop them off by the river. The primary place is going to be the original location, and then the secondary place is going to be the car and as well as the river. So that's where they would find some more data and some more evidence. The suspect is obviously anybody that could fit the description of being there. And you know, we are going to have lots of suspects right away in a crime scene in most cases, because what you have to do is start looking at the evidence, talking to the eyewitnesses if there were any, and then you can start eliminating people. So a suspect is very possible the person who did it and very possible the people who did not do it. But until you can eliminate everybody is a suspect that can actually fit the idea of being there at the crime scene and doing the crime. An accomplice is anybody who actually helps out for the crime. So think about a bank robbery. If there's going to be a bank robbery, what you're going to have is somebody in the car driving, and then somebody who, or many people who actually do the bank robbery. So in this case, what we would have is the robbers, which would be then the people who actually did the crime, and the accomplice would be the person who was the driver. So that is what we are talking about. In many of those movies, you're going to see somebody who gets beaten up and somebody holds the person, and then the other person that does the beating. The person who's holding the person would be considered the accomplice, okay? And until people can verify where they all were and it can be verified as to them being there, that is called an alibi. And if you remember, Ronald Cotton did submit a alibi, but his alibi was wrong. He got the dates mixed up, and then the people and the detectives on the case, suddenly they didn't give him much legitimacy because they feel like that he lied or he skewed his information, when he didn't really lie. He just got the dates mixed up. All right, if you haven't filled in, please fill in and I can move on to this next slide. When a crime occurs, you always want to look at evidence, and you want to look at everything to be evidence. You can't let your biases interfere with identifying what is and what isn't evidence. For instance, you're going to find a piece of chewed up gum, and you're going to see it in the ground. You're going to go, "Ugh, that's gross," and like walk away from it. Well, that chewed up piece of gum can actually have some dental records in there, so dental imprints. And if there is spit that was left over in there, they might be able to get DNA. So you can't think of that as garbage or just waste. That would be considered evidence. So we gotta be able to look at a variety of different types of evidence. What can there be? Testimonial, basically eyewitness ones. And we know that eyewitnesses are not always accurate. However, other evidence can help prove the eyewitness account as being accurate, or other evidence can prove that it is not accurate. The next thing that we would have then is physical evidence, and that is stuff that basically you can see. Footprints, tire marks, a weapon of some sort, blood, those are all going to be physical. But the stuff you can't see that can actually really still be there, for instance, a fingerprint on a can, that is going to be considered trace. You know, I did my wash this week, and I put some stuff in the dryer, some of the stuff I hung outside. But after I put the stuff in the dryer, I had to look at the lint trap because that's lint, are little pieces of our clothing that actually wears out. You know, you probably, and you might have a favorite t-shirt that's really, really thin right now because it's lost fibers along the way. That would be considered trace evidence. A hair is considered trace evidence. Stuff that's really, really tiny that can't be seen. So, what do you do with the evidence after you look at it? There's a variety of things you can do with it. You can verify that it actually was a crime. I'll tell you, this is a true story. One time I was outside in the park area across the street and I saw this metal box and it said U.S. Army, and I was like, what is this? Called a couple of my neighbors over. They had no idea. I called the police. I said, hey, I don't know, but there's this box here. And the police came. They crimed it all off, so they put the plastic yellow tape all the way around it. They brought in the bomb squad and everything. And then after looking at the evidence of that box, they realized that that was for those people who were doing like letterboxing and stuff. So it was not a crime. So when you look at the evidence, it may not even think that there was a crime committed. That would be my case in point. Try to figure out anything that are key points to it. Maybe an address that was left over the side, a bus ticket to somewhere, an airplane ticket to somewhere. That might be helping them figure out the crime. It might link the suspects saying, okay, now this airline and this person, and then look, it said 2 people, and we know that these people like to fly. So maybe that would link them up. Help to identify, for instance, what if there's a photo ID on that person who had done the crime, or sorry, who was murdered? That might identify stuff. Anything else of receipts that were done with credit cards, if there's fingerprints on it, that might identify people. Correlate with some eyewitnesses to say, oh, yep, that's really it. Exonerate, so for those people who really weren't there and don't fit the evidence, you can eliminate them, and then you can actually give the detective something to work with. All right, if you are not done with this, feel free to stop my video, and then you can start it up for the next slide. So, what do you got going on for the crime scene personnel? Well, the first off you're going to have are the police. They are what's called the first responders. They're going to be first on the scene. Do they need to rope off an area? Do they need to call for an ambulance? What else is needed? Who are the witnesses? Those are going to be there. The rest of the group may or may not be there. So the CSI unit may be there, probably are going to be there if it's a very, very serious crime. If it's going to be a crime where somebody smashed somebody else's car window, the CSI unit may not be there. The DA or the district attorney may be there to see if there is something of immediacy in which they can get a search warrant issued to go to somebody's house or somebody's car right away because they have a feeling that it is still valuable or still there. Medical examiner, if there's a death and they really want to know how that person died, they may come. Here's where the specialists come in that may be there or may not be there. And this is the type of career that I think is really awesome. For instance, if you love photography and you love forensics, put it together and become a forensic entomologist. If you love chemistry and you love forensics, then you should blend them together and become a forensic toxicologist who looks at chemicals. Or perhaps you love bugs and you love forensics. Put that together and you become a forensic entomologist, because bugs are very important, because some bugs are found in only parts of the country or the world than others. And when a person dies in death, bugs are an important way to detect how long that body has been there. And then detectives, again, depending on what type of crime, they may or they may not be there. Okay. All right. Moving on. These are the 4 steps that has to be done for any crime. First of all, you got to interview everybody, examine the crime scene, document the crime scene, which the document part takes the longest, okay? It would take the longest to do because there is lots to write. And what the CSI shows never show is the documentation process. You know, that's boring. If you had a TV show on and for 15 minutes all you see are people behind a desk typing, you wouldn't watch it. The last part is processing. So once all the evidence from the labs come back, all the witness statements, everything comes back, then you have to process what happened. So that is the last part of it. Now, I know you're done with your notes per se, but these are all the different types of careers that are involved that you could be looking at as well. So tool marks, question documents, and I'm starting from the bottom. Ballistics would be going into some type of lab as well, and you saw some of those videos. Any types of, let's say the crime involved a person who had a sliver. They might look at the wood that's inside of that sliver, okay? Anything of the area that was built. For instance, if you look at the Twin Towers, that was done, and they look at all of that stuff. Chemicals, the trace stuff of the hair, DNA, that's all involved. Now, since you guys weren't available, the last thing we did was put on what type of evidence you would collect. So at the bottom of your sheet, can you just add in what type of evidence you would collect from this picture? And that is it, everybody. Make sure you submit it, and you guys enjoy the day.